it's Brad Laurie or BlockchainBrad, and on behalf of BlockVera, today we are speaking all things Chrono.tech. To do that, we have the CEO right now to explain all things about what they're trying to do. His name is Sergei Sergienko. Sergei, thank you very much for making time to speak with us about what you're doing in your company.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you for having me.
No worries, mate. Now, for transparency, it's important that all people know this is a free interview. However, the team at Chrono.tech are providing some funds to support editing. So that is a small amount. That means that I don't have to do a lot of the editing myself, which I've done in the past. So thank you very much, Chrono.tech, for doing that. But once again, there is no funds going directly to me. This is free on my behalf. Now, Chrono.tech is something that has caught my attention because Sydney's come up, a part of Australia that I know and love. But Sergei, behind that, there's a long history all the way from 2016 in what you've been building. So let's go from the beginning. It starts off as a blockchain-powered product for HR, and very much you're focused on jobs and building that sort of industry. So can you tell us, in a nutshell, what does Chrono.tech stand for and what's the history there?
Yeah, good question, mate. Basically, what we're trying to do is we believe that the current HR policies and practices, right, are inadequate in our day and age. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that everybody realizes their fair value or the fair value of their work. And we do that. First up, we went all the way back down to Karl Marx, actually, and had a look at what he was talking about and what values there were and how he placed labor as a source of value. And we done a variation on that. And we basically, since then, we're trying to implement it.
Right. Okay. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about, just to be upfront. Now, interestingly, many of the core members of your team seem to have Russian names. You're obviously, have a Russian name as well. So, as I mentioned before, there's a connection to Australia. Can you just touch on though the team itself? Where does it originate from? And how is the team building now?
Well, see, in blockchain, I think you'd find a lot of Russian and Chinese names. I was actually quite surprised at first that when I went to conferences, right, the second most spoken English language on conferences was in fact Russian. Mm-hmm. So I never thought it was going to be as popular as it is. But yeah, that's what it is. I guess it stems from Vitalik being at the top and the Russian or Soviet physics school and mathematics school being pretty good. As far as Australia is concerned, I lived here for 23 years, which is 2/3 of my life. So that's why Australia is here. In terms of Russian roots, as I mentioned just now, that I believe that Russian and Soviet mathematics and physics school are, like in a lot of times, are quite superior, and that's why we draw from Russia. And also the price of developers and the wages there are a lot cheaper. Right.
Makes a lot of sense, actually, because as I mentioned before, you're supporting the editor, and the editor doesn't come from Australia that I'm working with at the moment for the same reason, actually. It saves me a lot of time not having to do all the editing as much as well. Now, let's talk about this in the context, though, of Chrono.tech. Initially, you weren't named that. So let's go back to the beginning in the history. Originally, you were Chrono.Bank. So tell us a bit about the evolution and the development of your company.
So basically, I mean, being in crypto, we kind of, initially being in crypto, you had to be kind of fast and you had to be very fast moving and do things fast, right? And since what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically tokenize people's work time, we thought that the word bank was appropriate in the name, since we would keep a ledger of people's work time and trade with it. I mean, that's part of the solution that we're proposing and working on. Now, since then, we kind of found out that real banks, right, do not like other companies use the word banks unless they're, in the Australian case, upper licensed and they have the ADI. Right, mm-hmm. so deposit taking institution and the government guarantee of 250 grand if anything happens. Now, also we've noticed that a lot of people in, say, even the third world countries, right, they started to confuse the bank with actually bank, right, and trying to remit us money. And and they just became a little bit of a joke. So hence we like to avoid possible repercussions of the banks coming after us, and that usually happens when you do have some success and people can sue you because
right, that makes a lot of sense. So it was more of a semantic issue or a legal issue that you transitioned. Okay, now what about your ABN, your registration? Obviously, you're a for-profit centralized entity essentially, but have you gone through all the right processes to be accredited or to be registered?
Well, at the time when we were doing it, it wasn't there wasn't any legislation towards it, right? So Austrac, for example, didn't even have any legislation in terms of trading cryptocurrency,
Okay.
and the ATO didn't have any ATO didn't have any guidelines to how to tax it or anything. So at the time, it was actually incorporated in Nevis, right? So, and it was like I wasn't really the front runner of it. I wasn't the one in corporation documents. It was actually another Russian guy that I had dealing with, and subsequently we kind of split ways, and yeah, we just keep going to what we promised and what we're trying to deliver, and I'm not even sure what the other guy is.
I see. So what's the status of it now, though? Because obviously you're trying to build a company. And I think that it's even mentioned that now in your website.
Yes, it's per project, right? Because Chrono.tech is actually well, four distinct
products.
say modules. You know, let's say modules or products that we're trying to get out there, and each product does have registration and does have Austrac number if we're talking about Australia, and it does have like ownership structure and
okay, that's good to know, because we're going to talk about all those products as well, Sergei, so that would be good. Now, your mission, let's explore that. It says that you want to make short-term employment opportunities easier to access. Now, we've seen other startups do this in the past since the big boom of 2017. We've seen the gig economy be something of discussion at the very least when it comes to blockchain startups. So what sets you apart in your mission?
Well, I'd like to think that we're very thorough, and we're kind of original, and we're very determined. So I would say that sets us apart.
Okay, can you tell us how you're original, though?
Well, we were one of the first ones out there, right, to actually start thinking about this idea. So we do have a bit of a head start on it with the gig economy and with the way people get remunerated.
Right, and obviously in Australia there aren't a lot of startups specific to that region, so that could be a boon for you. Now, let's talk about the coronavirus. Let's talk about the impact that that's going to no doubt have on the economy, especially when it comes to jobs. And right now, as we speak, jobs are being cut by necessity because of the impact this is having.
Mate, that's absolutely unprecedented and crazy what's happening. I mean, what's happening in Australia is absolutely mental, and I mean, what's happening in Italy and China is also crazy. So, yeah, it's a crisis that we've never seen before, and I think it's going to be here for a very long time. In fact, as we write this interview, let me just Google that. I think the Reserve Bank is actually meeting to discuss lowering of interest rates even further.
Yes, I would be very shocked if they didn't do that, especially, Sergei, given that the US has just made the bold move to inject $1 trillion into their industry economies to bolster the various sectors over there. We also see now the European alliance has now planning on injecting a significant amount of money, up to I think £750 of a trillion, or £750 of £1 trillion, I think. I mean, don't quote me, I might have numbers wrong, but it's a lot of money that these countries are throwing at this big economic crisis. So when it comes to jobs, what typically happens is that the jobs, decline significantly in what seems to be evolving as somewhat of a recession or moves towards it. Are you concerned for ChronoTech because of this?
Mate, it's not somewhat a recession. It's going to be a full recession, and I think, in my opinion, right, I think the Great Depression and all our stories about that will seem like child play with what's coming. As far as ChronoTech is concerned, Well, that's exactly what we do, and that's exactly where I think that's our opportunity to basically get up and stride. Because I mean, we value people's talent per hour basis, right? So in other words, even though and I mean, remote is what we trying to achieve here, and the trading of people's talent for another people's talent, and like, you know, if we're talking about Australian numbers, I'm expecting unemployment way over 10%, right, which is unprecedented. And everyone is going to find it very difficult to just keep going the way they have been.
Got it. Now, Sergei, sorry to interrupt, but you raise a really important point about the rise in percentages. And given that you're utilizing blockchain, you know, rather than we focus on crypto, let's focus on blockchain for a moment. That affords a unique value proposition when it comes to the gig economy, when it comes to 24/7 markets, and also access for people, especially now that we're decentralizing even our position as people, where we have to be more sedentary, we have to be more based in home. So how is the blockchain beneficial in the context of trying to connect people with jobs, especially when they're going to really need access to some sort of vocation or employment?
It's not per se with jobs, connection with jobs. It's a tracking value of those jobs.
Okay.
Right. So what that means is basically, if I'm a dentist or something, right? Or I mean, dentist is probably a bad analogy in terms of coronavirus currently, but let's say so, right? If I'm a dentist and the other guy's a cleaner, so I can fix his teeth for 30 minutes, and instead he would clean my house for 4 hours, right? So it's 1-to-8 relationship between the value of their work, and that relationship between the value of people's work is what blockchain is used for in Chrono.tech.
I see.
So
okay.
So it's basically a ledger of value.
Right, and the value of this also is the transparency and the tracking, the trackability of this, which is unlike what we've seen in the past, where really the books are open for everyone and people can make sure that there's legitimacy built into the code. Now, when it comes to developments you've made, one thing I definitely want to talk to you about is a stablecoin. Now, from my understanding, you're connected to a stablecoin, you're doing some innovative things there, and it's backed by not only banks, but audits as well. So is there anything you want to tell us about this development?
Yeah, as part of this platform that we're launching, initially we had an idea to actually have a labor hour as something stable, right? However, it's proven to be a little more difficult than we thought, right? And actually the concept is way ahead of its time. So we had to scale that right down and actually settled on a stable AUD. Now, stable AUD, it has a balance in the bank, and we're in the process of finding the correct auditor for that. The reason it's taking us so long is because the auditors, when they start, like the conversation usually starts here, no problem, we'll do a couple of grand per audit of the bank account, right? And just compare it to what number of tokens on chain. Then when they see the numbers in blockchain previously, or they just estimate it to be a lot more than what it is, right? They start rolling out prices like 200 grand a year for audits, right? And they start throwing in the shit that we don't really need. Mm-hmm. And then they use they say the elevated risk of the industry as an excuse to basically rape you on the audits, on the price of the audits, right?
Right. Well, okay. So the audits, you're still going through the processes of that, which is good to hear. And that obviously people can inquire about that once they're complete and read the reports. But let's go back to the stablecoin again, because many people may not be aware of what a stablecoin is. Essentially, that's pegging to fiat systems, which, often the narrative of the original iterations of blockchain merging with crypto, like Bitcoin, for example, there was a very libertarian and cypherpunk movement to move away from fiat. But what we're seeing now with the likes of Maker and many others is that many of them are utilizing the benefits, perhaps, of stablecoin, especially when we've seen some technical issues in various startups, so that they can gain, credibility in the mainstream. So is this why you've done that? Have you done this so that you can have a strong start when you engage for business, when you engage to support those, seeking jobs out there?
Well, just so we can pay people, to tell the truth, right down to the, right down to the point. We need the stable to basically use in the system, because even though I and my team are happy to receive payments in BTC or Ether, and we accept the the variability of its price as the standard, right, and volatility as standard, a lot of people are not like us.
Right.
As far as libertarian and the decentralization is concerned, I have admitted in a lot of interviews, right, before, that unfortunately when we were just starting it all, right, the mood and everything was very proactive and libertarian, right, and then basically stop the banks and stop the authority and all of this.
Really is true.
Unfortunately now, it all came down to stables. If you look at volume of say USDT, it overshadows the volume of BTC by at least 30% on daily basis. So basically, instead of US government being in control of it, you got a bunch of guys from Bitfinex to basically just being in control of their own private money that people seem to believe in. And as sad as it sounds, all issues, all aspects of decentralization go right out the window. So once again, humanity kind of stuffed up the good idea that was there from the start.
Yes, and I couldn't agree with you more, Sergei. You and I probably were both in the beginning of this development. Even pre-2017, it really was all about that narrative of liberating, sound money, enabling sound money to flourish. And we now see that being challenged by proponents of certain startups, even in the blockchain domain, and even conversations with regard to defining different assets has really changed over the course of the last few years. So we acknowledge the myths out there, but let's discuss the benefits of the stablecoin as opposed to digital cash, for example, because a lot of the time we hear that narrative of digital being a real draw card for crypto. But the reality is also you could just use AUD as a means for payment. So what's the benefit of the stablecoin as opposed to AUD? And are you concerned about the government's position in the future as they start to understand just how powerful stablecoins can be?
Well, to tell the truth, with the current, in Australia, we recently got Oscar, right? So, right. And Oscar is actually a lot quicker than Ethereum blockchain, for example, right? And to tell the truth, there's not too many blockchains that are as fast as Oscar either. So to tell the truth, the banks are kind of coming to the party and everything. Now, stable coin is valuable, right? So, for example, if you're a trader, right, or if you receive it in, if you receive wages or anything or payments in stable coin, it's still the truth. It's just they're valuable in terms of transfers, and swiftness with which you can lock in your positions, whether it's for payment for goods or whether it's for trading or anything like that, right? So in other words, if you're talking about, say, you want to buy something in a USD market, right? Looking at the Australian dollar now as an example, last week would have been a lot better for you to buy anything from US, right? Now, and more so, by the time that your payment might get there, if you're paying for something big, say, for example, using SWIFT, by the time your payment might get there, you might lose a few percent in current economic situation.
Absolutely, mate. It's a really good point. So economically, it's a very immediate means of transfer, and it's also peer-to-peer. Now, why hasn't the government followed suit? Why haven't they done that?
The government is following suit, and you know that because when Facebook started talking about stables, right? Then everybody lost their plot and then put a stop on it right away. Now, my take on this is we are way too small now for the government to even bother with us, right? But when it does happen, I would like to think, and that's my kind of exit strategy from all this mess, not from all this mess of stable coins. Basically, I'm happy to work with the government and happy to provide all the tools that we will develop by then to pass on the technology to them and for them to take it on.
Sounds like a great plan. Actually,
I'll be happy with a fraction of a percent for my for my troubles.
I hope so, because the scope of the government adopting this would be quite significant and quite a good payout for you if you're even involved slightly in that process of they adopting something that is so revolutionary and so needed, I would argue, right now globally, especially given that we're now being tested with people having to be forcibly transferred into their own homes or having to decentralize their own networks so that they can just, survive through this pandemic.
It's absolutely crazy. And I mean, considering that the normal monetary policy tools and instruments are no longer working, right? Hence the zero interest rates, and I'm sure we're going to go into negatives. I mean, the whole economy is going to, well, like I said before, it's going to be something that we haven't seen before. And I mean, a lot of people seem to be unprepared, but we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely, mate. Now let's talk about team for a moment. Now, you raised money through an ICO, as I understand, in 2017. Can you just touch on how much you did raise? And I assume you're using those funds to, continue to hire, because I noticed your advertising, and you do have a large team of 50 plus. So just touch on that, and I want to know, do you have funds left?
Yeah, mate. Basically, yeah, we have done an ICO, right? And we didn't raise that much. We actually raised 5.5 million, right? But through kind of favorable positions at the time, right? Like in crypto and everything, we basically lasted this long. And we do have, I reckon, at least a year of runway with the current price of BTC. Well, like I'm fairly certain something will happen within a year in terms of our products shooting through.
Okay. So that will be interesting to make sure that the products start to really provide that revenue, which is going to be essential for your viability. Now, I want to talk to you really candidly, if that's okay, about the token. Now, I had a bit of a look at the performance of the token, and I looked at all the stats. But before we do that, I wanted to just get real on the blockchain with you as the CEO. Now, your token, from what I can assess, is that whilst we say it has utility, that token was absolutely essential for you to start. Without that, you just didn't have the capital. So do you think it's fair we be real about this, Sergei, and acknowledge the token for what it really is?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
So the question really is, do we, for so many CEOs I talk to, they're so reticent to be real with me about the function of the token. So many of them don't want to acknowledge that without it, they just don't get that capital to start. But really, that's what it did. It had opened up the doorway for you to have that runway. So there's a mix between utility.
No, by all means. I mean, the thing is, it allowed us to do that. But I mean, you got to remember, if we talk about 2016, right? Like, there was no talk about ETH or BTC or NEM or Waves or anything at the time, right? Being even considered money. You know what I mean? It was just a bunch of 2016 even. It was just a bunch of geeks stuffing around on computers. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's a little bit when you're trying to draw the line really clear. Yeah, if the token was for ICO purposes, well, shit, yeah, it was. I mean, does it intend to have utility? Well, shit, yeah, it does. You know what I mean? Because I would obviously like my token to appreciate the value rather than tank like it did. So, I mean, to answer your question, well, strictly speaking, I mean, like, see, you gotta be careful with these things, and I'll be candid with you as well, right? I don't think I want to admit on video that.
Let me interrupt and help you out, because I'm not trying to suggest it's security. I'm not trying to do that. So, but what I want to do is get real with you about prospective utility. Very few CEOs, and the ones that are really transparent, talk about this openly. They explain that when they did the ICO, it was all set up for prospective utility. So that, and even Mike Novogratz, he explained this quite eloquently recently talking to Pompliano. He said that essentially when people looked at the CEOs and looked at the white papers and looked at the ICOs, it was a spec bet. You're speculating on the prospect of this company doing well and their utility as well, including that token. So that's why I asked you directly, because your token did tank, and much like every other ICO we saw, because there was a huge cash out from investors riding the wave. Sometimes the teams cash out to survive. So the reason I'm getting real with this with you is that we want to see that prospective utility. We want to see also that utility be proven in price appreciation based on revenue based on adoption. But what typically happens in the beginning is none of that. In the beginning, in the 2017 boom, it was just simply a means to start, to give you that kickstart into your vision and allow you to evolve as a company.
I mean, by all means, and that's exactly, I can tell you, I mean, prospective utility. I mean, imagine the audacity on me and the rest of the team and my Russian partner when we call out talking time. I mean, when you think about it, it really, we are the only people in the world that literally sell time, if you want to be technical about the words and everything. So to tell the truth, I wouldn't call it talking time if I didn't want it to succeed. And and I think it's one of the best marketing tools that we have. And as far as the name of the token and token itself, now I can list a number of reasons why it tanked, right? But once again, let's not get ahead of ourselves here, right? In 2016, when the ICO was gone, like because it started in December, 8th of December, actually, 2016, the price of ETH was something like $6, right? And every time I mentioned anything to anybody, ETH or BTC or anything, people were literally laughing at me. So when you think about it, right, there was like, and same with ETH ICO, right? It was a bunch of geeks stuffing around in the goddamn playground at the time, And I mean, just so happened that, for example, List, right, it doubled on its ICO when it happened, right? And but at the time, it was just like just a bunch of geeks stuffing around in a sandpit, essentially, right? All of a sudden, after 2017, when people realized value in it, right, they start rolling back and saying, "Oh, hold up, this is money now." And this is all these investors and everything. You've got to be very careful who and what you call investors here, because in all our documents, right, and all our ICOs and everything that we did subsequently as well, we have never called anyone investors.
Yes, and I can see the point, because often there's a difference between, or there is a stark difference between equity in a company and then the utility token itself. And myself as an investor in utility, and I'm going to say that because of the way that in which ICOs were set up. And essentially, for those who are wondering, ICO is just a method. It was just a means to fundraise, just like we've seen other methods as well. But underneath that was also the architecture for each startup, and it differed depending on whether some allowed investment in equity. Now, what you're saying here is very clear, but what I want to better understand is, now that you're going to introduce a stablecoin, how is the token going to appreciate in value over time as you start to prove the products are successful? And we will talk about the products, but I do want to understand that correlation, because that token has to make sense in your economics.
Yeah, well, the stable. Let's leave the stable token for a second, right? Because there's really not that much margin in it, right, for anything to actually start to happen. Now, our flex. What? Well, let's see first. 1 second.
No problem.
I'll start again. So then you can edit it out. Let's hold up with the stable token for a second. I could come back to the other flagship product of ours, right, which will provide and it actually does provide utility currently for the platform. So one of our platforms is essentially okay, I'm just gonna say it, right. It's a Upwork for digital cryptocurrencies, right, including digital, right. So basically, people put up the jobs they want to do. The other people see those jobs, they bid on it, or they propose the price for it, right, and they basically deliver. The funds get sent to a smart contract held there, and the people are paid as they deliver the job, right. So in this particular context, the utility is provided by you. That if you have time, as in a token time, then the use of the platform for you is free.
So there's actual financial benefits to using this token in the ecosystem that you're building. So what you're saying is you need the token as a fundamental part of your infrastructure.
It would be very silly of me not to use a token that is called time, put it this way. So yeah, we definitely need it. And I mean, that is what gives us character and distinguishes us from everybody else out there.
Yeah,
So,
and I hope you don't mind me pressing on this, because I
no.
think it's important that all of us know that you need that token, especially given that you're still moving towards increasing utility proof. Because now that you have these products, I really want to explore and extrapolate each of them in detail. But just, to retouch on, once again, your core focus, it is on recruitment, jobs, payment processes, as you mentioned, hence the stablecoin inclusion. Now, what would you like to say to those people who held, they hodled, as they say in crypto, knowing or having that same vision that you have of prospective utility, and really just willing to ride that long wave, especially given that the ROI right now is low. It's well below the initial entry point for many people, and the cap is low in comparison to where it was, some time ago. But having a look at things like your Circ supply, you don't have a lot of tokens, which is actually often a boon for networks like yours. But yeah, what would you like to say to those people who haven't capitulated, haven't sold off?
These people are core, right? They support us from the start and everything. And I'd like to tell them everything that I told them before, where no stress. We're still there. We're still doing what we intend to do, and we'll persevere. And a lot of the times, the race is not to the swiftest, but to those who keep on running.
Got it.
To tell the truth, I think that the coronavirus and crisis will actually weed out a lot of bullshit.
I bloody hope so. Mate. I hope you're right.
And to tell the truth, I mean, like I'm fairly comfortable with you asking all these questions, right? Because well, essentially, once again, it weeds out all the bullshit, right? So
I totally agree. And well, let's just dig deep. I rarely get this kind of candid discussion with CEOs, as I said, and I like to, really allow people an insight into the truth of crypto as much as we can from the privilege of talking to you. Now, we see at the moment bundles like with BitMEX. We see derivatives left, right, and center everywhere. And whilst derivatives are common in every market, I really wanted to ask you, about wash trading, about the BS in the space, about very nefarious actions that have taken place with some centralized exchanges. So are you concerned at all about the amount of fake volume, about the amount of, questionable conduct that's happening in the derivatives sector? And are you also concerned that it's taken precedence over the spot trade as well of tokens more generally?
People, there is such thing as greed, right? And that's what drives a lot of people everywhere, right? Now, to put things in perspective, right? And I don't know the exact numbers, but just the gravity of numbers would be understood. When you think about it, right? So you got exchange, say, I don't know, top 20, some exchange somewhere with that top 20, right? You think about the global exchanges like, say, ASX. ASX is what, world number 9, 10, something like that, yeah? And so let's call it world number 10 exchange for crypto right there. You have a look at volumes of, say, ASX, right? And have a look at spot volumes at number 10 on CoinMarketCap represents. Keep in mind that the volumes of, say, ASX are only, 9 to 4, 9 to 5 they close, yeah? And the top 10 is by far less than top 1. So I can tell you that nobody needs that many Bitcoins that much all the time to keep up those volumes, right? Because I mean, a lot of the times you buy it, and I mean, like there's not that many day traders to basically do it. Granted, though, there are bots that do it, but I mean, if arbitrage bots between exchanges, arbitrage bots between the futures exchanges and everything, and of course they drive up the volume, and that's why it happens. Because if you look at the market cap of, say, for example, USDT, because the USDT BTC is by far the most popular pair. If you look at the market volume of USDT, it actually easily 3 times, like last time I checked, it was 3 to 4 times the actual issue. So that means every USDT ever printed changes hands every 3 times in a day.
So does it concern you at all about the legitimacy of the crypto space at the moment, especially with the BitMEX bungle? What that taught us very quickly is that with the potential of bot attacks, as they allege, some argue that they also potentially switched off the entire system. That is an allegation. It's not necessarily proven. But no doubt something happened in BitMEX, regardless of the argument, that had a huge impact and ripple effect on all of crypto, and certainly created a cascade of events and liquidations. That alone, for many people, is a valid concern, I would argue, for the legitimacy of the space because of the impact it had on the price of BTC and everything else. So does it concern you at all knowing these things happen in the context of a very saturated derivatives market?
Mate, I can tell you this, right? Well, first of all, I just looked at the coin market cap, right? So the volume of USDT is actually 10 times. So it's 46 billion versus 4.6 billion on issue. Right. Think about it for a second. If you think about any particular share on the stock market, right? So you 10 times switch it over. But regardless, coming back to this, Mike, if you think that the traditional markets don't have insight in it, and every insight is prosecuted, then you're kidding yourself.
Right.
Traditional markets, right, including futures markets and everything, are as corrupt, at least, and as stuffed up as anything out there. It's just done by a few big banks who just don't give a flying F about anyone.
Right. So it's commonplace in every market.
Put it this way, compared to the real futures market, like the ones we tend to think about, with Chicago board or something, one of them, right? Crypto is child's play, right? So, I mean, like I always said this, right? Everybody was, running around being all rosy and thinking about unicorns, saying that, crypto is great. It's going to get rid of bad bankers and greedy bankers, and everyone's going to be happy and forever freaking great. Mate, at the time, and I said that for the last 5 years, that we don't know what's worse. It's either a banker with a lot of money, greedy banker with a lot of money, or a greedy geek with a lot of code.
It's a really interesting point, because a lot of people in that original sort of development of crypto, that in the cypherpunk movement, I know Eric Voorhees is a huge proponent of this. They would argue that it actually wasn't that group specifically who really assumed that greed position. Many of them were after sound money. But what we see is a transition into more of the digital gold narrative, whereby many people now want to assume collaborations with crypto VCs, for example, those that are wanting to see price appreciation in the asset itself. So in that situation, does it concern you that there are different camps and that there is very much a greed-centric position for many parties in crypto wanting assets to just appreciate in value, as opposed to that original narrative of trying to create worldwide digital peer-to-peer money, sound money?
At the end of the day, right, you cannot make anything in this world without having a large bank behind you, as in a player's bank, right, as in the war chest, let's call it, of funds. To get this war chest, I would say that you'll be expected to maybe cut a few corners, right? Because in a traditional understanding and with traditional values, it's very hard to get into it, right? Without it, right? Now, in terms of peer-to-peer money and peer-to-peer exchange of value, it's a great idea, right? But as much as I hate to say it, right, unregulated something like this will just destroy its purpose. Right. Because currently, at least, it's a devil we know. This one is a devil we don't know.
I see. And so I do want to apologize for my dog barking. I have my children at home at the moment because of all the situation going on around the world, and I'm just trying to struggle. So I do apologize for that. Now, mate,
it's all good. It would be a worry if the dog was smelly.
That's right. Now, Sergei, let's talk about your products, because I did promise that I wanted to explore those in detail. Now, you have PaymentX, you have TimeX, and you have LaborX. So please use this time, mate, to let us understand what these products are and how you're going to prove that they have revenue and thus inherent utility?
Well, yeah, let's start with payment. No, let's start with LaborX rather. Yeah, okay. So LaborX is, we initially envisioned it as an exchange of people's value of time, right? So as in the example I had done before about the dentist and the cleaner, it would be great if, for example, the dentist then could sell his future half an hour for delivery or for work on people's teeth for, say, I don't know, 10, 20 times, 10, 20 hours of the cleaner. That's just an example, right? So, and that was initially what it was envisioned as. In other words, people taking responsibility for their work and making sure that their work is uniform across their job, essentially, and being able to trade it in even future positions, right? So in other words, I wake up, I don't have any money, but I know I'm a good plumber. I can go and essentially trade 4 of my first hours of today's work to get myself a bus ticket or a Mercedes ride, in this case, if we're talking about Australia.
Okay.
You know, so initially that's what we thought through and thought we came up with and envisioned, and hopefully that's what we will come to. However, the problem is that a lot of people in this planet, right, they just want to be babysitted, right? So in other words, and team sport is a lot easier to play because and actually that's actually once again, as much as I hate to say it, but it's a quote from Putin, right?
Okay.
So team sports are very desirable because you don't have to play as hard because the rest of the team is going to perform anyway, right? And to tell the truth, a lot of the times it's the case. So a lot of people are very scared of taking responsibility for their work hour or for their performance, right? And hence things like salaries and everything exist. You know what I mean? So that's why not everyone is on wages, because a lot of the times wages and casual wages provide per hour better performance than a salary would.
That's true.
And
often people elect for them for that reason.
That's right, and because people just want to sit back and kind of enjoy the ride and you know, like blame someone else for their stuff ups, or but actually, like, this comes with the reverse. It's a double-edged sword, right? So you can stuff around a little bit and not perform as well as you would in a waged position as opposed to a salary, but then for the upswing, if you do perform well, you'd be very unhappy if you get paid as a salary as opposed to a wage.
Right. Okay. So again, going back to that gig economy, you're focused with that is with
That's
LaborX.
right. So,
now that's blockchain based, just to be clear. Now I wanted to ask you on that note about the smart dispute feature, because you built that in as part of LaborX. What does it do? And why is it important?
My friend, with anything where you start trading something not entirely tangible, right? Like as in people's time, what you need is a reliable score, right? Or reliable rating, right? So in other words, like if you look at Uber, for example, right? So each driver has a rating of, like, you know, like 5 or 4 stars or something, right? And they're very, very pedantic about it. A lot of the times they actually tell you please rating 5 stars. Now, it is understandable that in our vision, we do need to have a rating of people, and we do need to have a rating of jobs completed and everything. Now, it is also understandable that the ratings they currently have in, say, Uber or centralized state systems, they're not entirely adequate, because you can affect it, right? If you're an Uber driver, you can get your friends to ride with you to start with, right? And I'll always give you 5 stars, right? And well, you know, it's very easy to affect. For example, if you want an all-star profile in LinkedIn, for example, right? You just fill it up and you get all your friends to do you good recommendations and everything, right? So it's basically not truthful, essentially, right? Now, what we've done, we created like a weighted rating based on a lot of factors, not just past delivery, right? So that includes things like past delivery, peer review, that we yet to integrate, and stuff like that, basically, right? Peer review is one of the most important ones. Now, I must stress out it's peer review geographically separated, right? So in other words, if an engineer values another engineer, in his opinion, based in Australia, that engineer that does the valuing will probably be not in Australia. Now,
Okay.
coming back to dispute resolution. Dispute resolution is partially based on that, and that's what makes it unique, essentially. Right.
Okay, well, it's good to know that you've built that in. Now, can you tell us a bit more about the PaymentX and the TimeX in context? And then can you tell us how you are going on the track of revenue? Is it running its course? Is there more proof, any proof at all, that there's adoption in these products?
All right. Yes. So we discussed LaborX, right? We order the job and we get it delivered and everything, right? Now, PaymentX was a module of LaborX that actually helped us solve our pain. So what that means is we pay a lot of people using BTC, and we pay them remotely, and we pay them all at once, right? So basically, that means that we like it's rather used to be cumbersome in Bitcoin wallet, right? Or in Ethereum wallet, especially, to basically do a payment with one-click payment for everyone, right? For example, in traditional banking, they have this file upload. You upload your CSV and or whatever extension it is, right? And people are paid automatically, right? Now there wasn't anything like that in crypto, right? With a nice graphical interface and a nice intuitive UI, and to solve it for ourselves, we created PaymentX. PaymentX is essentially an invoice and payroll system or module to pay people in crypto, and that's what we've done. Now, to tell you the truth, right, we kind of hit it at the very bad time, right? And like with crypto going down and all this, everyone is kind of losing socks over it. So to tell the truth, the adoption is not as great as we would have hoped. So when it was only BTC, so in other words, you only could pay in BTC, the adoption was pretty close to zero, right? So that was the point where we started thinking, what the hell can we do? And we introduced a stable token into it, right? So USDC, USDT, and I'm sure. As a result of that, we might get some more adoption.
Sergei, let's talk about this. You raised such an important point. So often we hear everyone talking about BTC as the end all, as the absolute, pinnacle of utility and value when it comes to all of crypto. But what you're saying here is that one of the inherent challenges of BTC in your context was the volatility of that as a speculative asset. Now that you're introducing something that has that peg backing, has that stability, and ironically trust in a trustless, plan, is this the game changer for you, having the stablecoin connection so that people can, regardless of economic crisis or normal situations in job networks, is this really the game changer for people to start to engage and experiment with your network?
I hope so. And the thing is that let's put things into context here, right? For example, I don't know how old you are, but I mean, do you remember how the credit card transactions were processed before with a little machine?
I do, yes.
Yeah. So there was no direct ping to the bank, and it was just basically sitting there for a week waiting to take the money.
That was a huge issue in Australia. Actually, they were using the time to benefit.
Yes, that's right. By all means, and. I'm thinking of crypto and stable tokens and coins in particular as a fabric that ties up people's use. So in other words, my ideal case and what I would like to see happen is basically an instant transition between fiat into crypto and back. So what I mean by this is this: if you receive money, it will show up on your bank account as a UD, right? So you want to transfer it to your friend in, say, Colorado, right? You don't go to TransferWise or any guys like that, right?
Too expensive.
Too expensive and too cumbersome. You basically just go bank, send it to him by, it doesn't even have to be an Ethereum address or whatever blockchain you use in address, right? But call it like name, do it name place, right? So you transfer it to him. So as that happens, so what I would like to see happen, right? And I think we get in there is basically that AUD changed into stable AUDT, quickly exchanged into stable USDT or something similar, or USDC or something, and then change quickly back into USD and appears on your bank account in your friend's bank account.
I think you raise a really interesting point, because we're seeing more regulation and regulatory support for certain stablecoins. Not all. As you know, there's question marks hovering over Tether. But certainly we see, like you mentioned, USDC, for example, there's a lot of regulatory support in different regions for different stablecoins. And we're seeing even more of them come up at the moment. For example, I'm about to speak with PedNet, and they are doing some amazing things of independent work when it comes to stablecoins as well. Now, one of the things you do, I've noticed, that makes it easier is you have a Chrono-wallet. Are you developing that further? Is it a key asset to your system as well?
It is, but we are, well, we're not developing it as quickly as we probably should, and we're not focusing on it because we really want to build that bridge first, right? And to tell the truth, it will be more valuable if it can be used with any wallet.
Yep, that makes sense. So now, an agnostic system.
Yeah. Now the thing is, finishing the point before. Basically, you will never get an average person sitting there buying a UDT or a USDT or something on Binance, right? Because it's just too cumbersome, and you don't people don't need that. You know what I mean? However, what you would see is the bot executing the transaction as described before, and people just making it happen. You know what I mean? So whenever somebody taps the card, nobody thinks about how long and latency of the ping that goes to the bank and back.
Right, the really good points. Now, how are you going to get people on board to this whole plan of yours, especially in Australia, for example, where such a minority of people are utilising blockchain and utilising tokens according to the plan of the team? You know, because a lot of the people still in the space, you know, the majority, in fact, are speculating, like we see in casinos. So that transition into adoption and that imperative of utility is a tough ask, especially with the situation we now see ourselves in economically. So what marketing strategies are you employing? What are you doing outside of people like me who are doing these educational discussions for free? How do you get the narrative out there so people get the value of your utility?
Well, to tell the truth, as much as I hate to say it as well, right, Australia is not really a target. Right? Okay. So the target market for us is something like Philippines, right? Right. Something like Philippines, because there's a lot more happening there in terms of wages, and a lot more, say, a lot more examples of what I described of money remittances via different countries happening too. Australia, well, you know, as we know, it's a police state, and until it basically comes and hits you in the face, nobody's going to move anything to jeopardize any sort of traditional understanding and value of how people get paid. Okay. So to tell the truth, it's going to be, I think, an Uber scenario, and I'm pushing that way. You look into something half, let's say, questionably legal as far as the people are concerned, but ultimately better.
Mate, you raised some really interesting points. Now, your focus is on those areas that are most likely to adopt it initially. You mentioned the Philippines. So tell us a little bit more about the strategy that you're employing as a team to fast track and expedite the process of adoption in these regions now that you do have real products.
Well, to tell the truth, I think we can come in with how quick the product is, right? So what I mean by that is this: a lot of the times, right, if you work somewhere and you get paid, for you to get paid, you look at a week at least of delay, a fortnight or a month. What we like to see and what we're trying to achieve here is basically an instant and continuous payment, or a daily settlement, if we like to call it that. In other words, you worked 8 hours, you get paid 8 hours straight away on that day, right? That's actually a growing movement. You can look in a startup called Earning in US that's already moving the payday ahead for people, not as a payday loan, so which it might look to a lot of people like right. as it is. To tell you the truth, coronavirus, I think, has made a lot of people realize that their secure positions and full-time positions, and I'm talking about quantas currently, are not as full-time and secure as they think.
Exactly. Right? I mean, we couldn't have predicted this situation. We could, but you know, look at the jobs already being laid off. You're absolutely right. Yeah. There's so many sectors affected by this disaster.
So to tell you the truth, right? I'm of the opinion that something needs to change, and you probably, and what we're going to see, unfortunately, is a lot of, say, accumulated people's benefits in the company's account. All of a sudden, people will realize that their company is caught with their pants down with no basically accumulations for the time like that. Especially if they have to go a month or two without any orders, right?
Yep.
So you think about that for a second.
And
Now,
it's interesting
what we
also,
offer,
just to jump in on that,
yeah.
Novogratz even raised a very stark reality that in America, for example, many of the Americans, a significant percentage, only have about $400 in their savings. So for these issues you're raising, it's quite serious for many people. Many families are going to suffer because they just don't have adequate savings.
By all means, and I'll tell you even more. Apart from your personal savings, a lot of companies don't have enough money in their bank account to pay your super for next month unless the orders are coming through. So if you think you're sitting there on your little full-time position, right, with everything expected to get paid and everything, well, you got another thing coming, as well as accumulated leave, right? Because basically, a lot of the times, if the orders dry up for, say, SME, accumulated leave will not be the one that they prioritize over. In other words, they would use the money for accumulated leave to keep everyone employed for a little longer.
Yes, and those just left and now have their pensions obviously are pretty worried because they're seeing a significant drop in their super value. Now, partners, I want to go to that for a second. Now, Bcoin, Black Moon, Dash, Emmacoin, Civic, they are some of your primary partners, and I was trying to understand why you partner with each of them. Some of them weren't clear to me. So I was wondering if you could just touch on your partners and do they have anything of real reciprocal partnership value long term, as opposed to just that initial start when you did the ICO?
I mean, out of the guys you mentioned, Black Moon is the one we constantly share the technical knowledge with. Right, they're very smart guys, and they are respected greatly. And for the rest, basically, we did help each other in the early stages of all of our projects there, right? And essentially, that's when the partnership was established. As yet, we have not had to, collaborate intensely between each other. However, I mean that time may or may not come. So, at the time of the partnership announcement, we would have done something together that was beneficial for both, and that's why it was announced.
Okay.
So pretty much that's the answer to your question.
Sure, and on the point of future, because I really want to touch on that now, and not just the mission, but the clear roadmap from now on for the next, let's say, year. Do you expect also to partner with other parties that are going to have real meaningful, reciprocally beneficial moves in crypto and in blockchain? And what are the plans for you? What is the future for ChronoTech?
Well, to tell the truth, yeah, I do expect to partner, and it seems to me that I should probably start partnering with large HR companies in traditional space, because I mean, crypto space we pretty much covered, right? And it's all great, and I mean, we understand it really well. We don't, as a Chrono.tech, we don't entirely understand the traditional recruitment yet, like as in the inner workings on it. And I mean, we plan to understand it, but we haven't run a traditional recruitment company for the likes of Hazel or stuff like that, right? So to tell the truth, I mean, the ideal situation would be to basically for this coronavirus and economic downturn to basically shake up things a little bit in the recruitment industry, for them to start even listening and talking to us, because currently they don't.
Right.
So to tell the truth, this could be the catalyst for discussion.
I think so. I mean, it's really going to test the potential of your network. That's why I want to touch on this, because a lot of people are talking about job losses. So why not talk about job system alternatives? Because really it's a system you're building. Now,
that's right.
In this context, talk me through what you see is going to evolve for your company, for your network, and for your team in a very pragmatic sense. Talk us through the steps of what you think is going to happen, let's say, in the next year, based on the empirical evidence of what you've done so far.
Hopefully, right? And like I said, it's very what I would say now and what I will say now is a lot different to what I would have said a week ago, right?
Okay.
Because looking at how the situation develops.
Sure.
As far as we're concerned and the teams and everything, I mean, like I said, we got a fairly okay runway of at least a year, right? And what I'm looking to do during that is basically do a Series A for either everything or one of our products, right? the one that actually proves itself, right? So I don't
So
feed
equity
myself.
raise?
I don't think, yeah, perhaps.
Okay.
So perhaps an equity raise, and that will also be a validation of sorts of our hypothesis,
Sure.
right? So like I'm like we're actually exploring that
Okay.
as a plan B, and to hit it broadly, so to speak, because we like plan B and C and all those like redundancies. We are in the process of actually getting an FSL to start issuing the financial products that we can use in the TimeX exchange to trade, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
like
so in that context, that's where the use case is for the token, because when I hear things like Series A and I hear equity, I don't worry, but I start to think, okay, you're looking at that possibility for your products, but built in underneath all those products is still that token. So it's very important people understand, I think, from your position, exactly, once again, what is the pragmatic plan for that token. So do you want to just touch on that one little bit more, because we need to have confidence in that token for, not just the macro understanding, but for supporting your whole vision.
Oh yeah, by all means. Once again, it is really cool to have a token called time. One. Two, it essentially makes a lot of the features and a lot of the platforms that we build free for you if you hold a certain number of it, right? So if that's not utility, I don't know what is, right? Now, with the time, like truthfully, I don't even, because like this situation is very dynamic, right? And I don't know what the possibility as in the flow of time.
Sorry, I'm just losing a slight connection.
Very abundantly used. So yeah, and I'm sure that say in the future and down the track, because as a concept is so abundantly used that we'll be able to add to the current utility of time, which is to basically make our products free for the holders of it.
Right. Okay. Well, it's great that you've clarified that. Now, one of the things that we were talking about earlier was the imperative of confidence. We've seen when confidence wanes, it's a big challenge to then garner more community support, and it's a long battle up that crypto hill. Now, what about in your situation? What are you doing proactively to build your community so that couples with the productivity of your team?
Up until today, recently, we haven't done much, and I'm sorry to say that that's our mistake, right? So in other words, we had a great community at the time of the whole crypto boom and everything, right? Mm-hmm. But we did not put enough resources in actually building and supporting the community at the time, and hence the token tanked in the dynamics that it has, right? And unfortunately, that happened. Mm-hmm. What we're planning to do is basically more explanations, more user cases, and essentially grow the community and showing them, and like enough basically saying that we will, and to try to show them that we can by actually releasing products and hitting the targets that we set ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, Sergei, we could talk for hours, as you probably could tell, and even in the pre-chat, but it's been really candid. I have to say thank you very much for being so bloody transparent. It is very rare for CEOs to be so candid, and we need more of that, and we need more of the CEOs willing to talk about some of the other more concerning issues that do arise in crypto. Just to reiterate, you are all about fintech. You're trying to change the game for the gig economy by creating a whole new system that's tokenized, that's transparent, that's trackable. And most importantly, it's 24/7 and it utilizes the benefits of the blockchain in it and tokenize crypto systems to enable us to have better solutions for the job networks that we currently need globally. So thank you for being so clear on those. And finally, is there anything you wanted to add, as the CEO of this, for people out there wondering what on earth Chrono.Tech is all about?
Yeah, basically, what I don't know if you're gonna shoot the links down in the description of the video.
Yeah, so I will add them all there for you. Absolutely.
Okay. But yeah, I would appreciate you basically going, taking a look at that, right? And if you see something wrong with it, or if you see that it's looking at you funny, or if you see something that you don't like, I would love to hear your feedback. There is usually a form in all of our products. There is a form at the bottom right or bottom left. So different products have different forms with a question mark. Please do send your comments and bugs and anything that you would see there to our tech team to basically fix the mistakes quick and make sure that we release the best product that we can.
Absolutely, mate. Well, I will put all the links I can find on your products. You know, we talked about those 3 core ones. I will put your website there and any other resources I can find. Obviously, I looked through them as much as I could before the interview. But once again, once again, Sergei, thank you very much for your time. I found this to be very useful. And for those who are wondering, this is not paid. I'm not benefiting from this financially, but I also want to know more about ChronoTech and what they're doing. And obviously, the CEO is the best source for that. So once again, Sergei, thank you for making time and informing people who are engaged with crypto, and even those who are wanting to understand also how it can engage and be utilized in the mainstream sector of business. Wish you all the very best with you and for you and your team. And most importantly of everything is best of luck improving the utility of your token, because that has to, be the engine that drives everything.
Of course. By all means. All right. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, mate. Take care.